So let's get right into it. We're going to break down a pretty explosive public statement from a former Malacanang official, Arjay Lim. This is the story of someone who went from being deep inside the administration to, well, becoming a public dissenter.
And look at this. This picture really says it all, doesn't it? It just perfectly sets the scene. You can see right here Arjay Lim's proximity to the absolute center of power. He wasn't some outsider looking in. He was right there, part of the very system he'd eventually leave behind.
Okay, so what really makes this whole thing so fascinating is where it all started. He wasn't some lifelong critic or political opponent, not at all. His own statement makes it crystal clear. He started out as a true believer, totally bought into the administration's mission.
Right, so to really get why he decided to speak out, we have to go back to the beginning. Let's look at what that initial belief was all about.
So who is Arjay Lim exactly? Well, he held a pretty significant position as a director IV at the National Printing Office. And that agency is under the Presidential Communications Office in Malacanang. So yeah, this wasn't some small-time job. He was positioned right inside the government's official communication machine.
And listen to this. These are his exact words, spelling out his mindset at the time. This wasn't just vague support. It was a very specific kind of hope that this administration would be about correcting history and, doing honest work for the public.
And that belief, it was powerful. It kept him going, for sure. But it also kept him quiet. It was the reason he didn't say anything, even when he started seeing things that, didn't sit right with him.
But that silence, well, it couldn't last forever. That initial belief started to crack, started to erode. His support turned into serious concern as he began to notice what he calls damaging patterns.
And here it is. This is the turning point. It's a simple sentence, right? But man, it is just loaded with weight. You can feel a conscience hitting its limit. That reason he had for staying quiet, it was falling apart.
And he's super clear about this. What he was seeing, these weren't just isolated mistakes. The kind of thing you could write off as a simple error or growing pains for a new administration. No, it was more than that. He talks about patterns, excuses, and even cover-ups. He's describing a system here. Repeated actions, then the justifications for those actions, and then he says efforts to hide them. That points to something way more deliberate than just a few slip-ups.
And this is his final diagnosis of the problem. He saw a culture where accountability was treated as a threat, not a duty. Think about that for a second. The very idea of being held responsible was seen as something hostile, not as a fundamental part of public service.
So all of this growing sense of disillusionment, it all led to a breaking point, a moment where he had to make a choice.
And he laid out the choice he was facing in really stark terms. For him, staying meant participating, and staying silent, that meant giving his consent. Suddenly, there was no middle ground left. He couldn't just stand by and watch anymore.
So, faced with that choice, what did he do? He resigned. Simple as that. He decided the only option was to get out completely.
Now, obviously, a decision like that, walking away and deciding to speak out, it comes with a price. And he knows it. He talks about the personal cost of this decision head-on.
He anticipates what's coming. He knows friends still in the president's camp are going to be angry. He knows others will probably start to distance themselves, and some might just cut him off entirely. He's not naive about what this is going to cost him personally.
And all of this builds up to a final, pretty powerful declaration, a promise about what he plans to do next, with a specific eye on 2026. He makes it really clear that his past restraint shouldn't be mistaken for, ignorance or fear. He's basically saying, just because I was quiet doesn't mean I wasn't watching. I was aware, and I haven't forgotten a thing.
And then he really puts his own credibility out there. He's not just throwing out accusations. He's literally inviting people to challenge him and test his claims, stating he's prepared to stand by what he knows.
And this next quote, wow, it really gets to the very heart of his transformation. It's a declaration that his loyalty has completely shifted. It's no longer about protecting powerful individuals, but about protecting the public interest. That's his final word on why he's breaking his silence.
So this whole story leaves us with a pretty big question to think about, right? Beyond just this one person's experience, what does it really tell you about a system, any system, when someone from the inside feels they have no choice but to step out and sound the alarm?